Mansukhani. I am a teacher of Patanjali Yoga Sutras, and right now I am addressing you from Kolkata. The topic for today is the very core of yoga, very core of Patanjali's Yoga Sutras. Today, dear friends, we are going to see and understand Vrittis. We know that Patanjali has defined yoga as yoga chitta vritti nirodha. So he says yoga is nothing but the nirodha of vrittis happening in the chitta. Chitta loosely can be understood as the mind. Vritti is something which we will understand in detail, and nirodha means to put it to a stop, to bring it to a halt, to completely subdue all vrittis. Maharishi Patanjali says vrittis are the only goal for yoga. Yoga, the practice of yoga, has only one goal, and that is to stop, completely stop vrittis. Now let us first understand what are vrittis. Vrittis, broadly speaking, is a mental activity which happens inside us, in the mind domain. It gets triggered by the inputs from the sense organs. What do we get through the sense organs? We get knowledge from the outer world. We get knowledge from the environment outside our body. This knowledge comes in through the 5 doors of the 5 sense organs: the eyes, ears, nose, tongue, and the skin. They bring in knowledge. They bring in knowledge of the environment. They bring in knowledge of the world outside. They bring in knowledge of the universe outside. Now this knowledge is flowing in as if air is flowing inside a room. The body can be treated like a room. But if we are not sensing that air, if we are not feeling that air, if we are not engaging with that air, then that air is not noticed, that air is not experienced. When that air is not noticed and when that air is not experienced, it is not actually sensed. It simply passes away. The knowledge, the data, the information which came from the outside world, the outside environment, the outside universe does not get registered. It simply passes away. But if we make a note of it, if we experience it, if we sense it, then it is called a vritti. Therefore, any idea we have, any concept we have, any sense input which we feel, we realize, is called a vritti. This vritti is automatically stored in the chitta. The moment the vritti happens, there is storage in the chitta, there is storage in the memory cells, there is a network of neurons which are formed around this set of knowledge which is stored. Now Patanjali goes further and he defines that there are 5 kinds of vrittis. So today we will look at those 5 kinds of vrittis. So all that is sensed and stored is a vritti. But he says there are 5 kinds of vrittis, and they are again divided into 2 types. One is the klishta and the other is the aklishta. Klishta is that vritti, that recording, that memory, which actually is painful for that person. And aklishta is a memory which is not painful for that person. So what does it connect to, the klishta and the aklishta? You see, when a baby is born, it is born with certain kleshas. So these klishta is connected to klesha. Now let us see what these kleshas are. These kleshas are the obstacles on the path of yoga, which we have in us right from birth. They may be there because of heredity. They may be there because of other reasons, but they are there right from birth. And let us look a bit deeper into what are these obstacles to yoga each one of us is born with. These obstacles to yoga, which are inborn, are again five in nature. The first one is ignorance. The second is ego. The third is attachment. The fourth is aversion. And the fifth is clinging to life. When we say ignorance, when we are born, we have forgotten who we actually are. So in reality, as per yogic science, in reality, as per Sankhya theory on which the practice of yoga is based, it says that we are actually Purusha, we are actually pure consciousness, we are the Atma, we are the soul. But somehow we have forgotten this. It is no longer there in our memory. So we identify ourselves with Prakriti. We identify ourselves with the mind, body, matter combination. And we identify ourselves as part of the world. And this wrong identification, this misidentification is the cause of all our problems, is the cause of all our sorrow, is the cause of all the pain, all the suffering which we experience in our life. No human being is free from pain, suffering, and sorrow in his life unless and until he acquires the knowledge, he acquires the realization, he removes his ignorance and realizes that he is the Purusha, he is pure consciousness, he is the soul, he is the Atman. So, my dear friends, this is the first obstacle, and this is the mother obstacle. And this mother obstacle in turn leads to further obstacles. And these further obstacles become the botheration of human life all throughout their existence. So, the second one is ego. Ego is an understanding of the self in a way that makes the ego the doer, the actor of all that is happening. Now, this doership is good in the beginning, but after a certain stage, it limits the person. After a certain stage, it creates a kind of a bondage. What kind of bondage does it create, and why is ego a limitation? For a very simple reason. We come out of the Prakriti. Prakriti is infinite. Prakriti is permanent. Prakriti is ever-changing. And what comes out of the infinite Prakriti is the cosmic intelligence, the cosmic mind. Out of that cosmic mind comes the cosmos. And out of that cosmos comes the individual intelligence and the individual ego. It is called ahamkara. This ahamkara, I am the doer, this doership, this possession of things starts the reaction of putting up an infrastructure in place by which this ahamkara starts working in the world outside. So in the initial stage, it is good because it triggers the setting up of the full infrastructure by which we actually see the world, experience the world, understand our mind, reflect inside, and realize who we are. But this same apparatus of the ego, once when it operates at the individual level, it limits us. Though we are beyond the individual, we are beyond the cosmos, we are beyond Prakriti also, we are the Atma, we are the Purusha, we are the pure consciousness. So we by ourselves are infinite, permanent, eternal, changeless. But because of our identification with the ego, which is connected to the individual sense of understanding, which is connected to the individual mind, the individual operation, the individual possession of all that is around us, it limits us. So ego is the second biggest hurdle on the path of yoga. The third hurdle is attachment. When we are born, we have a natural tendency of getting attracted to many things out there. And we also have a natural tendency to get detached, pulled away, thrown away from many other things in the world. So this attachment and this aversion creates disbalance. And disbalance is an obstacle to yoga. Attachment or detachment, both are in a way to be taken care of by practice. When I say attachment, I mean sticking on to something, holding on to something. And when I say aversion, that is the ability of not holding on, but throwing it away, having a hatred, having a repulsion, having an aversion. So these two extremes are unwanted, undesired on the path of yoga. Yoga is the path of balance. The last obstacle, last klesha, is the obstacle of clinging on to life. All of us have a fear of death. And this fear of death, this klesha called abhinivesha, is the cause of all fear which we have. Therefore, these 5 kleshas, since they are present from birth, they are present within us. So the moment there is something picked up from the outside world in the form of data, in the form of knowledge, in the form of information, which comes in through the senses, and they get experienced or they get sensed, then we find that vrittis are formed. These sensations are happening because of the kleshas. Our experiences of the outer world are happening because of the kleshas. And just because the sensations of the knowledge flowing in from the outer world, outer environment, outer universe is taking place, they get stored, they get recorded. Our human system has a unique system that what all it engages in, it is recorded. It is recorded in the chitta as a memory. And this memory in turn leads to sanskaras. Sanskaras are impressions on the chitta, which have a life of their own in a way. They remain dormant for some time, but depending on the place, depending on the time, they may come alive. They get transformed into karma. Karma means action. Karma means anything physical which happens in the world outside. And this karma which happens in the world outside automatically leads to a reactionary karma. Yes, karma leads to action and reaction and a re-reaction and a re-reaction. So one karma can go up to infinite reactions. That is why in yogic psychology, in yogic philosophy, it is always said that we must minimize our sanskaras. We must stop our sanskaras, or we must allow our sanskaras to play out and be over with and be finished. So that, my dear friends, is how sanskaras are formed from vrittis, how vrittis are formed from kleshas, and how kleshas are inborn in us, and how sanskaras in turn lead to karmas, action in the world outside, and how the action in the world outside creates further vrittis, further sanskaras. This is the cycle of life. This is called samsara. The world outside is constantly moving on the cycle of vritti, sanskara, karma, vritti, sanskara, karma. Here a big secret lies. If we can intentionally produce a vritti, with time it will automatically become a sanskara, and with time it will automatically become a karma. This is the topmost secret of manifestation. which turns the mental thought into the physical action, the physical creation in the world outside. So what is triggered inside in the mental plane gets manifested outside in the physical plane. Now moving further on, as we said, these vrittis can be painful or non-painful. When these vrittis are caused by tamas and rajas, then they are painful because they lead to painful karma. They bind us with the world, they bind us with Prakriti, and liberation from Prakriti is the goal of yoga. So they turn out to be obstacles on the path of yoga. Why do tamas and rajas turn out to be obstacles on the path of yoga? Because tamas and rajas can be understood based on their definitions. Tamas means to have a form, to have a weight, have a color, have shape. And rajas means the change which keeps on happening from form to formless, from formless to form. So these two, the changes in form and the presence of the form, both of them trigger a memory. They get stored in the chitta. And once when they get stored in the chitta, they, as I told you, they become a vritti and a sanskara. Opposite to this, there is a third concept which is called sattva. Sattva is the formless. So what is formless cannot actually form an impression on the chitta. What is formless cannot be seen. So therefore, it is not getting registered. Say for instance, the air is formless. You cannot register air as a memory. The akasha, the sky, is formless. You cannot register the formlessness of the sky as a memory. So therefore, these do not produce painful vrittis because they are not getting memorized that way. So my dear friends, now I hope you understand that sattvic vrittis are non-painful, rajasic and tamasic vrittis are painful as they are obstacles on the path of yoga, and sattvic vrittis are not obstacles on the path of yoga. Sattvic vrittis are not obstacles because they do not create any sanskaras, any karma, but the other ones they do. They produce very gross sanskaras and karma. And the whole goal of human life, especially in yoga, is to remove sattvic, is to maintain sattvic vrittis and remove rajasic and tamasic vrittis. That is the goal of yoga, and that is what we must focus on. But as we practice yoga, what was sattvic and good for us, later on may have to be given up, because finally the end journey, the end goal happens when there are no vrittis. You must remember, even a sattvic vritti is connected to Prakriti, to nature, and there is a tendency to fluctuate from sattvic to rajas or tamas in a sattvic vritti. That is why, my dear friends, this is the basic understanding of vrittis. And now let us look at the different forms of vrittis. The first form we will look at is right knowledge. The second is wrong knowledge. Third, imagination. Fourth is sleep. And fifth is memory. Now these vrittis, they actually bind the Purusha to the samsara, to the world. Why do they bind? Because then the Purusha becomes busy in looking at these vrittis, looking at these sanskaras, and then it gets bound by them. And once when it gets bound by them, it forgets its true nature. It forgets that it is unchanging. It forgets that it is pure consciousness. And it starts believing that it is the mind, it is the body, it is the matter. It starts believing in a limited existence, though it by itself is infinite. it by itself is permanent. The Purusha by itself is eternal. So that is why these vrittis bind and limit the Purusha. And that is why they have to be removed. So once when you know that the 5 vrittis which we need to take care of are right knowledge, wrong knowledge, imagination, sleep, and memory. Now, you might ask a question, how can right knowledge be a vritti? How can right knowledge be something we have to do away with? You see, any knowledge which is being sensed is a vritti. Any thought which is being sensed, experienced, stored is a vritti. Any idea, any concept, any object which is sensed, which is experienced, which is stored is a vritti. Therefore, my dear friends, even right knowledge is a vritti. Now, right knowledge may be a vritti which is beneficial, and right knowledge may be a vritti which is non-beneficial. So all these 5 vrittis can be beneficial, can be non-beneficial. All these 5 vrittis can be painful, can be non-painful. So it depends on each vritti specifically. Let's say, for example, we are studying the Patanjali Yoga Sutras. The knowledge of the Yoga Sutras is right knowledge. And today, at this moment, it is beneficial for you. But there will come a time, there will come a stage, because this knowledge has come to you through the sense organs. This knowledge has created a vritti. This knowledge is stored in the chitta as a sanskara. There will be a time when you will have to remove this also. It is only when all sanskaras are removed that we actually reach the final stage of yoga called kevalya. It is also called liberation. Some people call it moksha, freedom, complete independence. So for complete freedom, independence, moksha, then all that we need to do is ensure that all the sanskaras, all the connected memories are removed. Once when we do that, then there is no scope for any action coming forward because of the data stored in the chitta. So then there is no karma. And once when there is no karma, that is the end of the samsara. Because as we saw, karma is action in the world outside. It leads to a reaction inside us, which forms a vritti, which in turn forms a sanskara, which leads to another karma, because all sanskaras turn out to be karmas with time. That is the way sanskaras are made. So vritti, once it is experienced, once it is sensed, is actually living in us and in the chitta, in the internal mind. It is stored and living. And when the right time comes for it to come out and become a karma, become an action, it does that. And that is the time when it influences our life, because then it again creates a reaction in us. It might get sensed again in us. So this leads to another vritti, another sanskara, another karma, and the cycle keeps on going on and on and on. This cycle is called the vritti, sanskara, karma cycle. And the objective of yoga is to break this cycle. It is only when we are able to break this cycle permanently that we can get liberated. We can experience complete independence. We can experience freedom. We can experience kevalya, moksha. So that is the purpose of yoga, to stop this cycle. And since all this is starting from vritti, the goal is to stop vrittis. That is why yoga says the definition of yoga is yoga chitta vritti nirodha. We have to control the vrittis. We have to put a stop to the vrittis. We have to subdue the vrittis. So it all begins with the vrittis. Life begins with vrittis. Life begins by noticing what the sense organs are bringing in. The moment you notice, the moment you experience, that puts up the seed of life. That seed of life remains stored inside the chitta. And when the right time comes, the chitta, like a soil, allows that seed to germinate, and that seed germinates into a karma, which creates a set of actions in the physical world outside. So this is how life perpetuates itself. Now, another vritti is wrong knowledge. Just like right knowledge, we might pick up something wrongly and assume it to be right knowledge. So that wrong knowledge by itself being wrong, but it will also create a vritti. It will also be sensed. It will also be stored. It will also create a sanskara and a karma, and the cycle of life will go on. Now here is another interesting thing. What does Patanjali call as right knowledge? He says anything which we are perceiving through our five sense organs, they constitute right knowledge. The word for it is pratyaksh. What you have seen with your own eyes, what you have heard with your own ears, what you have sensed with your own sense organs is given the highest priority of proof of right knowledge as the pramana of right knowledge. So first comes the sense organs. Second proof of right knowledge comes out of inference or logic. So when you are not able to actually perceive, see, experience yourself, but you can by logic come to a conclusion that this is what has happened, then that is called anumana, and that is also considered to be a proof of right knowledge. So an example of anumana can be when we are looking at, say, a distant place and we see smoke, black smoke coming out densely. So then we can come to an anumana that there is fire out there, because smoke comes out when there is fire. So when we are seeing smoke but we are unable to see the fire, we can safely and rightly come to the conclusion that it is fire out there, though we are not able to see fire. So this is the second form of right knowledge. But this gets a lower priority than pratyaksha, directly sensing it. The third form of proof of right knowledge is verbal testimony. Supposing I am not able to see it, perceive it, experience it, I am not able to apply my anumana also on it, but I know somebody who is an authority in his field and who says so it is possible. So I believe him. I go by his verbal testimony. Say for instance, I have a heart problem. I go to a heart specialist, a cardiologist, and a cardiologist after testing tells me this is the problem and this is the solution. Just because it has come from an expert who carries a reputation, who carries the right credentials, I believe him. I go by his statement and I accept his testimony on the fact. And that is another way of giving a proof of right knowledge. Moving further, let us go to the third vritti, that is imagination. Now, imagination is a change in the state of mind by something which is actually not there. There is no object connected to it, but we are imagining it. Just by imagination, the state of our mind changes. In order to understand better, let us take a relook at the definition of what is a vritti. A vritti is that activity in the mind which brings about a change in the state of the mind. So the mind is carrying some data, the mind is carrying some memory, mind is carrying certain mental networks, neuron networks, and they are in a particular state. And then some sensation is done. The sense organs are flowing their knowledge inside, but we were not sensing it. The mind was elsewhere. But the moment we sense it, it becomes a thought. The moment we sense it, it becomes an idea. The moment we sense it, it becomes a concept, it becomes an object, It becomes stored inside us, inside our mind. It becomes stored in our memory cells. It becomes part of our mental network of neurons. So the moment it gets stored, that is when one says a vritti has occurred. Now these vrittis will keep on occurring if we are not attentive enough to not allow them to be registered, not allow them to be stored and memorized and experienced. So what needs to be done is we need to be careful of what we are doing with our mind, what we are doing with the information, knowledge flowing in through the sense organs. Now he says this imagination brings about a change in the state of the mind. Knowledge was bringing about a change in the state of the mind based on what was coming in from outside, based on inference, based on the testimony which I was picking up from other people whom I believed, whom I had faith on. Then I was picking up some wrong knowledge, which was also creating a change in the state of my mind. So any change in the state of my mind is a vritti, and that is where the life cycle starts. So vrittis have to be stopped. So imagination is the third vritti we are discussing here, because it changes the state of the mind. It puts us into the future, which has not yet happened. It is not yet turned into a physical reality. It is still in the mind. The fourth vritti, which Patanjali has pointed out, is sleep. He says sleep is a vritti. There is some debate about it. Some commentators say that sleep cannot be considered as a vritti, but others say sleep is a vritti. I personally believe when we are sleeping, our state of mind changes. So definitely it can be called a vritti. Now, when we are dreaming, then also our state of the mind is constantly changing. When we are in deep sleep, then also our mind has no content. So there also the state of mind is changing. So sleep, in my opinion, yes, sleep is a vritti. It causes a change in the state of mind. It is part of the memory because of which it happens. Because if you look at it, why are we sleeping? And why is our sleep cycle connected to the cycle, the movement of the sun? Because maybe thousands of years back, we got conditioned to the sun setting, and we got conditioned to putting our body to rest because it was dark all around. Movement was difficult. There was danger out there in the jungles, in the forests, or wherever we resided, thousands and thousands, probably much, much more years back. So, my dear friends, sleep is considered a vritti because it brings about a change in the state of mind. Now the question is again, as we had seen, vrittis have both are painful and non-painful. Vrittis are klishta and aklishta, beneficial and non-beneficial. So is sleep beneficial? I think yes. If you are tired, if your body needs some recuperation, then sleep is good for you. Is sleep non-beneficial? Again, yes. If you're oversleeping, then sleep is definitely non-beneficial for you, and you must do away with your sleep or reduce your sleep and increase your state of awareness, increase your state of attention for a longer duration. And the last vritti is memory. So if you realize, friends, memory is all about the sense objects here. Patanjali says, and the commentators on Patanjali Yoga Sutras say, all that we experience of the objects outside, which are sensed and put in us through our sense organs, once they are sensed, once they are noticed, once they are experienced, once they become data stored in the chitta, then they are memorized, then they are a memory in us. But if you look at the whole setup, you will find everything is memory. You will find right knowledge is also stored somewhere. Wrong knowledge is also stored somewhere. Imagination also definitely gets stored somewhere. That is why you remember your imagination, or else it will just come and go. It will disappear. It wouldn't have been noticed. Just because you are noticing your imagination, experiencing, storing your imagination, it is there with you. even after the experience of imagination has expired. And if you look at sleep, as I told you, sleep is a conditioning of the mind. So this again is memory. And the last memory itself, memory 100% is memory. So my dear friends, all vrittis are vrittis because they are stored. And then they become sanskaras, impressions on the mind, impressions on the chitta. And these impressions are kind of living impressions with time at the right place and the right people, they turn into activity. They become karma. They act out in the physical world outside. That is the beauty of a vritti. What starts as a mental thought eventually ends up as a physical action in the physical world outside. And this, as I told you earlier, is the biggest secret of manifestation. Once you understand this, then you can create anything you want in your life. So my friends, that is all today on vrittis. We all saw the cycle of vritti, sanskara and karma. We all saw how vrittis are formed. Vrittis are formed from kleshas. Kleshas come from birth, and vrittis are formed right from birth. Vrittis cause us to sense, experience the information which is flowing in through the 5 doors of the sense organs from the outer world, outer universe, outer environment of the body. And just because of the kleshas, they turn into sanskaras, they turn into karmas, and then the cycle of life keeps on going on. The purpose, the goal of yoga is to stop these vrittis, because then we stop the activity of the mind and the mental cycle and the physical cycle which the mind creates. And once when we are able to control the mental cycle and the physical cycle which the mind creates, then there is complete silence. There is complete state of spirituality, both in the spirit, the mind, the body and matter, everywhere, each zone. And when all of them are still calm and silent, the spirit, the mind, the body and matter, that is where complete fusion takes place. That is where complete yoga takes place. In a way, you can say that leads to the joining up of all the multiple dimensions of this creation. And that is what we are actually interested in. That gives, that state is a state of extremely high knowledge, extremely high power and extremely high presence. Just because the differentiation in the various layers of reality, the spirit, the mind, the body and matter have disappeared. So like a fish, you can move from one zone to the other zone to the third zone by simply swimming across. So it all is one. It all becomes one. It all becomes the totality for us. That is why Patanjali in his Yoga Sutras, in the very second sutra, defines yoga as yoga chitta vritti nirodha. Stop all vrittis. He says, stop. Bring a stop, complete stop to all vrittis. And the entire yogic practice is all about bringing the mind to a stop, to a standstill, bringing the changing states of the mind, the thoughts, the ideas which are constantly forming and getting stored, to stop completely and to bring a halt. And once and when you are able to bring that halt, you become a yogi of the highest order. You become liberated from the cycle of life and death. You become liberated from this whole prakriti, which is constantly changing, dancing all around you, enticing you, and taking you away from your central point of normal existence, zero existence. So my dear friends, please understand, yoga is only about stopping the vrittis. And vrittis are the starting points of life. And vrittis come in all of us, right from birth, because each one of us is born out of ignorance of the fact that we are not the body, we are not the mind, we are the pure consciousness, we are the soul, we are the spirit, we are the Atma, we are the Purusha. And it is only when you realize this that you will find vrittis are no longer happening in you. Vrittis stop. Until you realize this, vrittis will keep on happening. Uh, Sanskaras will keep on happening, karma will keep on happening, and the cycle will never stop. So please stop the cycle and experience bliss, experience the infinite in you, which is there, but it has got trapped, it has got lost in the cycle of the vritti, the sanskara, and the karma. My dear friends, with these words, I would like to uh, stop my talk here. I hope by understanding this, you will realize that the moment you get to know, the moment you realize that you are the Purusha, the Atma, the soul, the unchanging, around which the whole Prakriti, that is the mind, body, and matter combination, is constantly changing, you will be in the highest state of human existence possible. You will be completely free from all sorrow, all pain, all suffering, all dukkha. And that is the goal of yoga. That is the goal of Sankhya Darshan, the theory on which Patanjali Yoga Sutras are based. And once you are able to achieve that, then you can very well teach it to your family. You can very well teach it to the people of your society, and you can very well teach that technique of putting the mind to rest by stopping the vrittis to people of your country and people across the whole world. And that will be the biggest service you will ever do to humanity. And together we can heal this planet, and together we can gift a happy planet to our children, and together we can bring about the next stage of evolution, that is Satyuga. We will be able to stop Kal Yuga and move forward into the highest possible state of Satyuga. So my dear friends, thanking you once again. God bless you. I hope you have understood that it is only by coming out of ignorance we will be able to achieve the highest. It is only by putting our vrittis to rest that we will be able to come to the highest. And the vrittis are only 5 in number. They are right knowledge, wrong knowledge, imagination, sleep, and memory. Now, all of them can be under your control. You can remove right knowledge and clean up your mind. You can remove wrong knowledge and clean up your mind. You can remove all that you have imagined and stored and clean up your mind. You can remove and erase all memory of the past, which is no longer of use to you, and lighten up your mind, clear your mind. And moment you're able to do the 4, you will find your sleep will be far more peaceful. Your sleep will be for a shorter duration, and maybe over a period of time, you will find you require less and less sleep. So my dear friends, that is the secret of yoga. I hope you have understood. You will be able to bring permanent happiness. See you tomorrow again at 7 p.m. and let us together create a world which is a world of complete happiness. God bless you. Thank you so much. See you tomorrow at 7 p.m. on Facebook Live, same page. Thank you. Thank you.